Justice League is finally here, the movie in which Batman, the Flash, Cyborg, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman team up to fight against Steppenwolf. We've already had movies with Wonder Woman and Batman in the DC Extended Universe, but this is the first time we're really getting a good look at the Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg. As most people know, this film went under a very difficult production when Zack Snyder's daughter tragically committed suicide. He had to step away from the production, and Joss Whedon came in and did very extensive reshoots and rewrites. Henry Cavill was working on Mission Impossible 6 at the time and had a mustache that they had to digitally remove for all of said reshoots. Because I guess a ton of reshoots and rewrites is just the Hollywood norm nowadays. So how is Justice League? Well, I can say this, it's definitely a lot more consistent than I thought it would be for a film that is kind of directed by two people. It does feel like one person directed this movie. It's more consistent than I thought Rogue One was in tone, and certainly more consistent than Suicide Squad. But it doesn't really feel like a Zack Snyder movie, and I've seen all of his films. This is the least Zack Snyder-y of all of the films that I've seen him direct. And that could be for one of two things. It could be that he has decided that he's going to make a more lighthearted film with a little less baggage, or Joss Whedon has more of a stamp on this film than we're being led to believe. Whatever the reason, this is a surprisingly lighthearted movie. I would even go as far as to say it's a little fluffy. And I'm not really necessarily saying that's a bad thing. This is a easy, enjoyable watch. It's 2 hours and 1 minute, and that's including credits. This is due to a mandate that was sent out by Warner Brothers, forcing the filmmakers to not make a film over 2 hours. This can also be difficult with this movie because we're trying to introduce people like Cyborg and the Flash and Aquaman, characters that were only briefly referenced and sometimes briefly seen in other DCEU movies. And so they have to set up this team, somehow get Superman back into play, and set up Steppenwolf and have an actual movie that makes sense in 2 hours. And due to that, this movie can feel rushed. Character intros, especially for people like The Flash, we've basically seen his character intro in the very first trailer. It's so brief, he's very excited to work with this team because he doesn't have any friends and he doesn't have anything else to do. It's funny, it's very Barry Allen, and I thought Ezra Miller was great as the Flash. I've been waiting ever since I was a kid to see the Flash in a big screen movie. So it was a huge delight to see the Flash brought to life so well by Ezra Miller and some terrific special effects. The Speed Force was extremely exciting, and Aquaman was entertaining. I like Jason Momoa quite a bit as the character. I thought he was funny, he was likable, and that's definitely the vibe they're going for here. They are trying to do a course correction and be a little less serious and try to be more lighthearted and more fun. And that's very clear when you watch this movie because, as I said, it is a little fluffy. And when I say that, I just mean that it's just kind of easy to watch and it doesn't feel like you're carrying anything with you while you do it. Which can also make the film feel a little disposable once you've seen it. And some of this is due to Steppenwolf. They try to take time to set up Steppenwolf and make you understand his backstory. There's an excellent sequence on Themyscira where he is trying to obtain one of the mother boxes and all of the Amazonian warriors are trying to keep him away from it. It's one of the best action scenes and one of the most exciting action scenes in the movie. But as a villain, I found him very weak because he's basically a big CGI monster in this movie and you never really feel as if he is a presence or something really to fear because this movie is very lighthearted, and that can be a big problem. The sense of urgency, the sense of fear, the sense of realism is pretty much out the window. You don't really feel like this is actually something you're supposed to be afraid of, Steppenwolf. He's such a CGI creation, and he's so weak from a characterization point of view that I never really gave a shit about him. During the finale, they're all battling in this sort of ghost town where not too many people live, but there are a fair amount of people there. They make that clear. But they choose to only show one family throughout the entire film. They constantly cut back to this family, and you see they have kids and a mom and a dad, and it's just this one family that you see. And so you never really feel like people are in danger. They only focus on this one family throughout the entire finale. And so you just don't really feel like anyone's in real danger. It's just a really pretty movie, and you can be excited while watching really awesome superhero stuff happen. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory sense. I like me some superheroes. I have my entire life. And so anytime I can see some of my childhood heroes quite literally battling it out on the screen, I'm excited to be there. And I was excited to see Justice League. And I think overall, this is an enjoyable watch. I wouldn't say it's a complete course correction, but I would say it's a step in the right direction. It is very rushed, though, as I said. For instance, Cyborg, portrayed by Ray Fisher, very well, I might add. I think Ray Fisher is good as this character. He is one of the most difficult characters to get across here because his backstory is very murky in the film. I mean, I know what it is in the comics, but I have to always separate that. I have to realize that this is a movie, and the majority of the audience that goes to this movie, like the general public who just wants to go see the Justice League, they probably haven't read too many of the comics. And so here we get some hints and some backstory explained as to what happened, but Cyborg's position on this team just basically ends up being the guy who interacts with things. He touches things, he reads technical readouts, and he tells people what they need to know, and he doesn't really do that much. He has an integral thing that he has to do, and he has to be there to make something work. But just because he stands there interacting with something for 10 straight minutes, it's just not very exciting, and I wish that Cyborg had more to do than just be the guy who reads files and touches things. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, of course, is great. I loved her film. She was one of my favorite parts of this movie as well. Ben Affleck, once again, really strong as Batman and Bruce Wayne. I've been on his side since before BVS even came out, and he was great once again. Henry Cavill as Superman. This is my favorite Superman has ever been in the DCEU. When he appears, it's so awesome. They really did some cool stuff with Superman, and I won't give you any spoilers away, but the things that they did, it really made me happy as a longtime Superman fan, and I think most Superman fans are going to be happy with the way he's portrayed here. And yeah, in a few shots, you can definitely tell the mustache has been digitally removed, but I wonder if you really would have known if it wasn't so widely reported, because everything now involving comic book movies or Star Wars is a news article or a clickbait headline. And so if we didn't know, we might not notice, but now that we know, you can kind of look in a few shots and be like, that's definitely a CGI upper lip. But it's not the kind of thing that would tank a movie. It's just noticeable in a few scenes. But again, my biggest issue with this film is that it does feel rushed. And I think if you delete the production issues and just not even think about that, I think I would boil it down to Warner Brothers' mandate that it has to be 2 hours or less. Because there's so much they're trying to do here, and they don't have enough time to do it. Barry Allen's setup is very, very small, as is Cyborg's. They just don't give you enough time to really appreciate some of these characters. And they're entertaining. They're likable. They say funny things. And so you can kind of get behind them and appreciate watching this. But there just wasn't as much depth in the team as I wish there could have been. When you have to put certain things into a movie to set up other films, and that's the only reason it really fits into this movie, you're going to get into some messy plot points, and you're going to get into some things that don't really work. And that's the biggest issue of all cinematic universes. Something else I would have liked to have seen is a little more squabbling amongst the team, more character confrontations, things that they disagreed on, because the scenes in which characters on the Justice League fought or disagreed, I thought were some of the best in the entire film. But it's brushed over so quickly to get to everyone battling Steppenwolf in a big red green screen area. And I wish that there was just more character confrontations, because that would give us more depth on the team. It would give us more reasons to feel like they are separate entities trying to work together, not just one big team that has one goal. I think where you can tell the most that two different people have directed this movie and that there's been rewrites is that scenes don't always flow with a natural momentum. Scenes come and go, and they feel like contained moments, like a clip you might watch on YouTube that's really cool. Like, oh, I want to watch that scene where Batman does that, or I want to watch that scene where Flash does this. And it doesn't always feel like it creates a whole picture. And this is the kind of thing that I have to remember, because I'm such a huge fan of all these characters. But I'm also someone who loves to examine film. And this is not a comic book. You know, I know a lot of these characters' backstories, and I can look at this movie and I can fill in the gaps that are not in the movie. I can say, well, I understand what Steppenwolf is doing here because I know what they're hinting at. Or I understand why that person's in the movie because I know what they're hinting at. Or, oh, that's cool. They did that because I remember that from issue whatever. But most people who go to this film aren't going to connect those dots. And so some people will go to this movie and be a little murky on plot details and not quite understand what certain characters are talking about or what Steppenwolf is trying to do. And that's understandable, and I have to recognize that as a huge comic book fan, but also as a huge film fan, because there's two differences here. And this is one of the biggest issues that I think any film adapted from any source material, whether it's a novel, a video game, or a comic book, has to face, is how can we tell this story for an audience that has no idea who these characters are, except for what they know from pop culture? And Justice League has some issues with that. I think hardcore comics fans are going to get and appreciate a lot of the references more than general audiences will. And since I love comics and I love these characters, I found myself smiling for the most part. This is a movie that I have enjoyed a lot more than some of the other DCEU films. I think that it is lighthearted and entertaining, but it doesn't really feel like it sticks with you that much. It is a little bit disposable in the long run. I can say that overall I have breached the gap and I am on the positive side here, but it's still got a lot of work. And if there is an extended version, it could improve some things, because I don't really look at this movie and see one giant glaring flaw. It's just tonally very messy, and it feels like a lot of things are happening at once, and its villain is very, very weak. He's just a big, strong guy that punches things. And beyond that, you can't really get that much more out of him. But it's the chemistry between these actors, the camaraderie amongst them all, the dedication from all of them, as well as the fact that this movie understands that this is supposed to be entertaining. This is supposed to be exciting for people who have wanted to see this for a long time. And it also is a little bit self-aware. Certain characters that wouldn't normally tell a joke do. And that might be Whedon. Sometimes he likes to do that with comic book characters that are very macho. He likes to kind of bring them down to earth a little bit and have them say something humorous, and you're like, okay, that's a person behind that mask. And that works. All that being said, it is a little sad, though, that to make a film that it seems like more people are going to enjoy than the others, they had to make it a little more disposable. So I'm curious what that actually says about comic book movies. Can you have it both ways? Can you make a comic book movie that's very serious and yet somehow still be very entertaining? Yes, you can. We've seen it done. But have we gotten so saturated with comic book films at this point that we need one to be kind of fluffy to appreciate? Just something to think about. I'm going to give Justice League a B-. I plan on seeing this one again. I'm not going to rush out and see it instantly, but I do think that they are heading in a good direction. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching. As always, if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.